Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I think it's time we should head back into the good old Reddit story, shouldn't we? Now, allegedly, these stories are all true. Believe it or not, my friends, believe it or not. Tell you the truth, I'll let you into a secret. I do not believe they are true, but anyway, we'll just run with it. I hope you will enjoy these stories, my friends. 1, 2, 3, let's get into it. Snapchat friends. A couple of years back, when I was 17 years old, I was really big into Snapchat. I was kind of obsessed with building my Snap score, so I would add random friends and accept random requests to do so. One day, I really needed a ride to a pawn shop to sell something, so I posted on my story if anyone was able to pick me up and take me. I was more so expecting a close friend to respond and give me a ride. I got a text from some girl I had never talked to before. She was my friend on Snapchat, but we never had a single conversation or shared any pictures back or forth before. She texted me something along the lines of, "Where are you heading?" I replied to her saying that I need a ride to a pawn shop. Then I proceeded to ask her if she even lived in the same state, which she did. But the place that she lived in was a 2-hour drive from me. I told her not to worry about it and I didn't want her to drive 2 hours to take me to a pawn shop. She replied with, "I mean, as long as you have the gas money, it's cool. I'm bored anyway." For some reason, that didn't sit well in my gut, and I added again that it was okay, but she insisted. So I agreed that she could come and pick me up if she was willing to send me a picture of herself. I was just being curious. She didn't do so, then asked me what my address was. Now, I've always been a cautious person, so I didn't feel comfortable with sharing my address. I ended up giving her the address to a gas station that was about a 15-minute walk away from my house. She replied that she'd be on her way shortly. I sat there contemplating for a solid 5 minutes or so. Then I texted her back and said, "Hey, I'm sorry, my friend just pulled up out of nowhere and he's going to take me. Sorry for the inconvenience. Maybe we can still chill some other time." My friend wasn't there. I didn't want to chill with her later. I just had a really bad feeling in my gut to not go through with it. The fact that she was willing to drive 2 hours to pick up someone she'd never met before just didn't sit right with me. About a year later, I was 18 and working at a grocery store. I took my lunch break when I went out to my car to eat. I ended up getting a text from a friend on Facebook, which led me to hop onto Facebook and scroll through my feed. I passed a news story that had one of those attachments because it was sourced on a different website. I always scrolled past them, but I had caught a glimpse of whoever was on the cover of the article and scrolled back up because they looked somewhat familiar. When I scrolled back up, I got chills. It was a girl from Snapchat a year prior. The headline of the attachment stated that she was arrested for attempted murder. I know that there is a possibility that she wasn't a bad person before, and something just happened to make her attempt such a thing, but something tells me that I dodged a major bullet by trusting my gut and not going with her.
Thank you for the great support, I really do appreciate it. If you are enjoying what I'm doing, why not think about subscribing to my channel? It is free and would help me a great deal.
While hanging out at an abandoned school, me and my friends stumbled upon something. This is going to be a rather lengthy story, so please bear with me, my guys. Back when I was in my early to mid-teens, around 2007-2008, me and a bunch of friends would regularly hang out in an old abandoned school. A very small school, with only 8 classrooms, a teacher's room, a cafeteria, 2 bathrooms and 1 room we had no idea what was in, since it was always locked, but I'll get back to that later. This school hadn't been able to keep up with the 80s modernisation of our town, and the large numbers of newcomers that followed with it, and as such, it quickly closed down in favour of new schools and buildings by the end of the 1980s. Most of the place was boarded up completely, but you could enter through a window in one of the classrooms where the board had been ripped down. Our routine was always the same. Whoever of us got off school first would go down to the building, go through the different rooms to make sure everything was empty and safe, as these buildings had earlier been known as a local spot for drug addicts and used needles and such as a common sight for us by this point. So this one day, me and my friend were the first to get out of school, and as per usual we take the walk down to the building. Upon entering and stepping out from the classroom and into the hallway, we immediately see a large man. I remember him as quite huge, but that might possibly be how he appeared to us as kids, and my friend let out a huge scream. The man doesn't appear shocked or scared and doesn't seem to react to us. He turns to look at us and then asks, "Have you guys seen Fred?" We tell the guy that we haven't seen anyone and only just got there, to which he sighs and shrugs. And then he pushes past us to leave the same way we just entered. Now, our friend has an unusual name, so the chances that this guy was just looking for another random guy who just happened to have the same name were pretty low, but none of us had ever seen this guy before, and I happened to know most of Fred's family as well. When we described what the guy looked like to our friend, he didn't seem to know who the guy could have been either. And for the next few months, we were too scared to go back. When we did return, about 3 or 4 months later, it was the middle of summer vacation, and we thought it would be rather fun to climb on the roof of the building and sunbathe. Upon climbing it, we found the roof to be rather weak and close to caving in. But something made us take the risk and dare to venture out onto the roof after all. The hole in the roof was only about the size of a football, and one of my friends came up with the idea to lower her arm down into the hole and film the room using her phone, so we could all see what the room looked like. She puts her arm down, and as she is filming, she suddenly lets out a blood-curdling scream and immediately retracts her arm, but her phone is no longer to be seen. She was certain that something had knocked it from her hand, and as we looked down through the hole, we could see her phone laying on the floor. We climbed down from the roof and entered the building, now intent on doing whatever it would take to get into the room, so our friend wouldn't have to return home without a phone and have to explain what happened. About 30 minutes later, we finally managed to make a hole in the door and put our hands inside. And when we tried to use the door handle on the inside of the door now opens without any trouble. We step inside and we all stare in silence. To this day, I have no idea what this room was doing in a school building, and I sincerely hope it was never used for what it looked like it was intended for. The room is about 4 by 4 meters and the floor and walls are all of solid concrete. In the left corner of the room, from where we entered, was 2 metal bowls sitting on the floor. And at the back of the room was 5 chains dangling from the wall. 4 with equal-sized cuffs and 1 large that looked like it would fit round the neck. Needless to say, we swiftly picked up my friend's phone and immediately left the place. However, the room had us both scared, but also slightly intrigued. So after some talk back and forth that night, we decided to go back to look at it again the following day. When we returned the next day, we found the door to be locked once again, and someone had covered the hole we made in the door with a large wooden board nailed to the door. Once again, we immediately left, and after that visit, we never ever returned. I have no idea what we stumbled upon that day, but I am certain my days hanging out in that place is what sparked my interest in abandoned places. Today I am an experienced member of the Urbex community and have had much more sinister experiences with places like this that I might share with you all sometime. Since taking up Urbex, it has been a dream of mine to go back to that school and check if the room is still there, but unfortunately the place no longer exists, and the area is now home to a thrift store. Hey everybody, how are you enjoying these stories so far? Are they your sort of thing? If so, why not think about giving my channel a little subscribe? I very much appreciate that. I need all the help I can get, my friends. I need all the help I can get. Anyway, I think it's time we should return to these stories. Enjoy, my friends, enjoy. I hope they're not too scary for you guys and girls out there. The creep next door. When I was in my early 20s, I lived in an apartment with my mum, brother and my 2 sons, who were toddlers at the time. The guy who lived next door was about 60, working for a cable company, and he had always given off some serious creep vibes. We were upgrading our internet, and another guy who worked for the same cable company came to do the install. If I thought my neighbour was creepy, he had nothing going on this guy. I was in and out while he was there that day. Every time we were in the same room, he would just stare at me with a weird look on his face for an uncomfortable amount of time. The next day was Saturday, and my creepy neighbour must have been having a little get-together. To my dismay, the creep who had done our install was at the party. It was clear that they were drinking all day, getting louder and more obnoxious as the day wore on. A little after 8 PM, both my mum and my brother left, leaving me there with just my 2 sons. Around 8:30, there was a knock at my door, and there stood the creepy installation guy. He was clearly drunk, and he had said he had forgotten to have my mum sign some document the previous day. I said, "No problem, I'll sign it now," and he took a step in an attempt to enter my apartment. I positioned myself so he couldn't get into the door. Again I said, "I'll sign whatever you need." He pointed towards the kitchen and said he had given my mum the document and it was in her house. He pushed the door and more aggressively tried to step inside my apartment. And this time I made a more forceful block of his attempt. At that point he turned his head to his left and said something to someone. I moved just enough to see who he was talking to. And it was my creepy neighbour who was standing with his back pressed against the wall of my apartment so that he was out of my line of sight. I quickly stepped back and shut and locked the door, and I saw them walk away. I knew then that the situation was super shady. But just how shady it was didn't occur to me until I was telling my family what happened. Why would the guy have needed a signature on a document that he left with my mum? Why would he come at 8:30 at night when he had been drinking all day? Why did they wait until moments after my mum and brother left, something they would have definitely seen? Why was my neighbour standing so that I couldn't see him? I'm glad that my creep radar was on full alert that night, because it really scares me to think what might have happened if I had let him walk into my apartment.